My name is Vincent Dillard. I'm 36 years old, living in Seattle. My life had always been about keeping everything in perfect order. No surprises, no slip-ups. Even my calendar looked like a wall of bricks. Each day slotted in with just the right amount of work, exercise, and carefully chosen moments of relaxation. My wife, Michelle, and I had always been in sync that way. She was a marketing executive, precise and polished, the kind of woman who turned heads and never looked back to see if you were still watching. We met at a business conference in Denver. I was there to talk numbers. She was there to pitch some new campaign. We bonded over hotel coffee and stale conference room bagels, and before I knew it, we were sharing everything. Vacations on Lake Chelan, hikes in the Cascades, a couple of rowdy huskies named Thor and Loki who acted like they owned the place. Our Craftsman home in Green Lake was our sanctuary. On Sundays, Michelle would make fresh coffee and read the news at the kitchen table while I tackled spreadsheets on my laptop. Sometimes we'd take the dogs out to the lake. Other times, we'd just sit quietly together in the backyard, listening to the distant hum of the city. It felt like everything in our world fit together, like puzzle pieces clicked into place. But in the last few months, things had started to shift. Subtle at first, so subtle I almost didn't notice. Michelle began working late on Mondays. She'd tell me it was market research deadlines, last-minute presentations. And I believed her, because that was who we were, two people who never lied to each other. At least, that's what I thought. Then there was the perfume. Michelle had always worn something elegant and understated, but lately, she'd come home smelling different. A scent I didn't recognize, sweet and youthful, almost out of place in our grown-up world of matching coffee mugs and two-dog walks. It clung to her skin, lingering long after she dropped her purse on the hallway table and headed upstairs for a shower. I try not to think too much of it. Maybe she was just in the mood for something new. Maybe it was just one of those little changes people go through, like swapping out a haircut or switching brands of toothpaste. I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that. Monday nights became my own private ritual. I'd cook dinner for one, chicken breast and brown rice, nothing fancy. I'd feed the dogs, check the market reports, and tell myself everything was fine. Michelle would text me around 8, saying she'd be late, and I'd text back, sure, no problem, love you, because that's what we always did. Routine, order, but inside, something was shifting. I'd catch myself watching the clock, counting down the hours until she got home, trying to read the expression on her face when she walked through the door. Did she seem different, tired, relieved? I didn't know, and I didn't want to admit I was even asking the question. I told myself I was imagining things, that if I kept everything steady, we'd get through it like we always did. The part of me that loved numbers and order believed it had to be that simple. But the part of me that loved Michelle, the part that remembered every smile and every late-night conversation, knew something was changing, and I wasn't sure I was ready to face what that meant. So I kept going, kept pretending the cracks in our perfect life were just stress, just the weight of busy schedules and long days. I told myself that if I ignored them, they'd seal themselves back up. I didn't know it yet, but the truth was already seeping through those cracks, and soon, there'd be no way to hide it. It was a Friday evening when Mark, my coworker and closest friend, leaned back in his chair and said, "Hey, Vince, I thought I saw Michelle at that jazz bar on 4th Avenue last night." I blinked at him, half listening as I typed out an email. 4th Avenue? She doesn't even like jazz. Mark shrugged. I know. That's why I thought it was weird. She was laughing with some guy I didn't recognize. They looked close. For a moment, the words didn't register. I just stared at my screen, fingers frozen over the keyboard. Michelle, laughing with someone else, in a place she would never go? I forced a laugh, shaking my head. She was probably just there for work. You know how she networks. Yeah, Mark said, his voice gentle. Maybe, but, man, it looked pretty cozy. Just thought you should know. I brushed it off, too quickly, too easily. Thanks, Mark. I'm sure it's nothing. But as I left work that night, the thought stuck in my head like a splinter. When I got home, Michelle was already there. She was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner like nothing was wrong. She turned and smiled when she saw me. Hey, how was your day? She asked, wiping her hands on a towel. Busy, I said, moving to kiss her on the cheek. Her perfume, still that new, sweet scent, hit me immediately. My stomach twisted. Yours. She didn't look up. Oh, meetings all day. I'm exhausted. I wanted to ask her right then and there, why were you at that jazz bar? Who was that man? But the words felt heavy in my throat, too clumsy to say out loud. So I didn't. I smiled and nodded, telling myself it didn't matter. But it did. It mattered more than I wanted to admit. The next morning, as I was gathering up the laundry, I found it. A tie in the basket, one I didn't recognize. It was expensive silk, with a tiny designer tag at the back. I held it up, frowning. Michelle walked in behind me, coffee mug in hand. She saw the tie and hesitated, just for a split second, before she spoke. "Oh, that," she said lightly. "It's from a marketing meeting on Monday. One of the team members left it behind." I nodded slowly, feeling the lie settle into the room like dust. Right, a marketing meeting. She didn't flinch, didn't look away. Yeah, they always go overboard with those things. You know how it is. But I didn't know. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't believe her. That night, when Michelle was asleep, I did something I had never done in all our years together. I took her phone off the nightstand and quietly slipped out to the hallway. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through her call logs, looking for something, anything, to prove to myself that I was wrong. There it was. A number I didn't recognize, called 3 times in one day. No name, no saved contact, just a string of digits and a timestamp that matched when she'd said she was working late. I felt my heart start to pound. I told myself it was probably nothing. A work number, a vendor, a client. But in the pit of my stomach, I knew. I put her phone back where I found it and lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. I thought about the perfume, the late nights, the tie in the laundry, all those tiny cracks in our life together. I had spent years making sure everything was perfect. But now, I realized, no amount of precision or order could fix the feeling that had started to take root in my chest. A seed of suspicion. And once it was there was no going back. A week later, Mark invited me to an art exhibit at a boutique gallery downtown. He said it was exclusive, one of those places where everything was white walls and champagne flutes. I said yes because I needed the distraction, something to shake the feeling that had been gnawing at me. The gallery was small but crowded, every corner buzzing with conversation. Abstract paintings hung on the walls, the kind that looked like someone spilled paint and called it genius. I walked through the crowd, nodding at strangers, trying to pretend I was part of the scene. Then I saw her, Michelle. She was across the room, standing beside a man I had never seen before. He was tall, well-dressed, with that easy confidence that seemed to wrap around him like a tailored suit. Nathan, I would learn later. But in that moment, he was just the man with his hand resting lightly on my wife's waist. She was laughing, head tilted back, eyes bright. I hadn't seen her laugh like that in months. My stomach twisted. She looked up then, and for a split second, our eyes met across the crowded room. I waited for her to smile at me, to wave me over, to pretend that everything was normal. But she didn't. She looked away like she hadn't even seen me, her hand sliding up Nathan's arm as she leaned closer to him. I felt frozen. My feet planted to the floor while the rest of the room kept moving. Around me, people were sipping wine and talking about brush strokes and composition. But all I could see was Michelle, her hand on his chest, her lips close to his ear. I turned away and walked back toward the entrance. Mark was chatting with a couple by the door, oblivious to what was happening on the other side of the room. "Hey, man, you okay?" he asked when he saw my face. I forced a smile, shaking my head. "Yeah, just not really in the mood for this place. Want to get a drink somewhere else?" he offered. "No, I'm good," I said. "I'll see you Monday." He gave me a searching look, but didn't press. I left the gallery, stepping out into the cold night air. The street was busy, cars and buses roaring by, headlights cutting through the darkness. I walked down the block without really knowing where I was going, my thoughts spinning like the wheels of the cars that passed me. I thought about the perfume, the late nights, the tie in the laundry basket. And now this, Michelle's hand on another man's waist, her laughter ringing out in a room I didn't belong in. I felt like a fool. Like everything I had been trying to ignore was now standing in front of me in sharp focus. She wasn't working late. She wasn't just tired or stressed. She was there, with him. And she had seen me, and she had chosen to pretend I didn't exist. When I finally got home, the house was quiet. Thor and Loki were asleep in the corner, tails twitching in their dreams. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, my hand gripping the edge of the counter, trying to steady myself. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just stood there, breathing slowly, feeling the cold kitchen tile under my feet. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't just holding on to a routine anymore. I was holding on to something that was already gone. And I knew that whatever came next, I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. The truth was standing in a crowded gallery, her hand on another man's arm. And no matter how much I wanted to deny it, I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't unknow it. I woke up the next morning knowing I couldn't keep living in this half-truth anymore. The image of Michelle at that gallery, Nathan's hand on her waist, it was burned into my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, it was there, sharp and undeniable. It was a Saturday. The house was quiet, the dogs still dozing in their corner. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the steam rising from the mug. I didn't know how to start this conversation. All I knew was that I couldn't keep pretending. When Michelle came down the stairs, she was already dressed. Jeans, a soft sweater, her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She looked like she was about to leave, a small suitcase by the front door. I tried to keep my voice calm. "Where are you going?" She paused, her hand on the suitcase handle. "I told you, I have a team retreat in California this weekend. It's all last minute, but we're finalizing a new campaign, and..." I cut her off. "Are you going alone?" She blinked, her mouth opening like she had to find the right words. "Of course. What?" I took a slow breath. "Because I saw you at the gallery last night, Michelle." "With him." For a moment, the only sound was the ticking of the kitchen clock. Michelle's fingers tightened around the suitcase handle, her knuckles white. Then she let out a sigh, her shoulders slumping just a little. "Nathan," she said softly. "His name is Nathan." I felt the breath go out of me, like a door slamming shut. "How long?" I asked. She looked at the floor. "A few months," she said quietly. "It started with dinners, business dinners, at first. But then it just happened." I swallowed hard. My throat felt tight, like I was trying to talk around a stone. "And this trip?" She met my eyes then, her expression flat. "He's meeting me there," she said. "We're going away for a few days." I nodded slowly. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse her of anything. I just let the truth sink in, like cold water down my spine. "You could have told me," I said, my voice low. "You could have said something before it got this far." Michelle's lips pressed into a thin line. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said. I almost laughed. "You think this didn't hurt?" She closed her eyes for a moment, like she was trying to find something to say. "I didn't plan it this way, Vincent. I didn't. But things changed. We changed." I thought about all the years we'd spent building this life together. The weekends at the lake, the quiet dinners, the dogs curled up at our feet. All the little routines that had once felt like home. But now, they felt like a lie. And standing there in that kitchen, I realized I couldn't keep pretending that this was something we could fix. "I can't do this anymore," I said finally. "I can't keep living in a house that's built on lies." Michelle didn't argue. She didn't try to tell me I was wrong. She just looked at me with a sadness that felt like a door closing. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I really am." I nodded, my chest tight. "I know." She picked up her suitcase and walked to the door. She didn't look back. And when the door clicked shut behind her, I stood there in the kitchen, the dogs stirring in their sleep, and felt something inside me go quiet. The routine was gone. The calm I had built my life around was gone. But in its place, there was something else, something raw and real. And I knew that whatever came next, it would be on my terms. No more pretending. No more lies. Just the truth. The weeks after Michelle left were a blur. I tried to focus on work, on the dogs, on the little tasks that made the days pass quietly. I told myself it was for the best. I was done living in a house of lies. And the sooner I got through the paperwork and the silence, the sooner I could move on. But then one afternoon, I got a call that felt like a punch to the gut. I was at the office, half listening to a conference call, when my assistant buzzed me. "Vincent, there's someone here to see you. He says his name is Nathan." For a second, I thought I'd misheard. "Nathan?" I repeated. "Michelle's Nathan?" Yes," she said, her voice small. "He says it's important." I hung up without another word. My heart was hammering as I walked out to the lobby. Nathan was standing there in a crisp suit, looking like he didn't belong in the fluorescent light of my building's waiting area. He gave me a tight smile. "Can we talk?" he said, his voice low. I motioned to the empty conference room, not trusting myself to speak. When the door clicked shut behind us, he let out a slow breath. "Look, I know you probably don't want to see me," he started, "but there's something I think you need to know." I crossed my arms. "I don't think I need to hear anything from you." He looked down, his jaw tight. "It's about Michelle," he said, "and she's pregnant." For a moment, it felt like the room tilted under my feet. "Pregnant?" I said, the word tasting bitter in my mouth. "And you're sure it's yours?" Nathan hesitated. Just a flicker in his eyes, but it was enough. "She told me it was mine," he said carefully. "But I don't know. I thought you should hear it from me." I let out a bitter laugh. "From you," I said, shaking my head. "That's rich." Nathan didn't flinch. "Look, I'm not here to defend what happened," he said quietly. "I know how it looks. If there's a chance that child is yours, I thought you deserved to know." I stared at him, trying to read his face. I didn't know if he was being honest, or if this was just another manipulation. But either way, the damage was already done. My marriage was over. My life had been ripped in two. And now, a child. "Do you even know what you're asking me to believe right now?" I said, my voice flat. That Michelle was lying to both of us? He swallowed. I'm not asking you to believe anything. I'm telling you what she told me. I don't know what she wants. I just know I can't live with not knowing the truth. For a moment, I didn't say anything. I thought about all the nights I'd spent waiting for Michelle to come home, about the perfume that clung to her skin and the way she'd smiled at that man across the gallery floor. I thought about the life I thought we'd built together and how easily it had fallen apart. I guess you're right about one thing, I said finally, my voice cold. I do deserve to know the truth. Nathan nodded slowly. I'm going to figure it out, he said. If it's mine, I'll take responsibility. But if it's not, you deserve to know that too. He left then, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. I stood there alone in the conference room, the walls closing in around me. My mind was spinning, my stomach in knots. Pregnant, a child, and a betrayal that went deeper than I'd ever imagined. When I finally went back to my desk, I stared at my reflection in the darkened screen of my monitor. The man staring back at me looked tired, bruised, but underneath all of that, there was something else too, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Resolve. Because if there was even the smallest chance that child was mine, I was going to find out. No more lies. No more shadows. Just the truth, no matter how much it hurt. I couldn't stop thinking about Nathan's visit, about the weight of his words and the way he looked at me like he was searching for something, redemption, maybe, or just a way out of the mess he'd helped create. The more I thought about it, the more I knew I needed answers of my own. I couldn't live with the doubt. A couple of days later, I tracked down Natalie. She was Nathan's ex-girlfriend, someone I remembered from a few awkward work dinners when Michelle first mentioned Nathan as a business partner. I found her number buried in my phone, a half-forgotten contact from one of those polite networking events we used to go to together. When I called, she sounded surprised to hear from me. Vincent, she said slowly, her voice wary. What's going on? I need to talk to you, I said. About Michelle. About Nathan. She hesitated. Okay, I'm free this evening. We met at a quiet coffee shop near the waterfront. She looked tired, her eyes ringed with dark circles, but there was a calmness in her that I hadn't seen in anyone else connected to this mess. We ordered coffee and sat in a booth by the window, the city lights glimmering outside. I know this is awkward, I started, folding my hands on the table, but I need to know the truth. Natalie nodded slowly. I get it, she said. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. I should have done this a long time ago. She scrolled for a minute, then pushed the phone across the table. Text messages, dozens of them. Photos, too. All from Michelle. Sweet words, promises of escape, the same things I had once believed were just for me. My stomach turned. How long? I asked quietly. Almost a year, she said. She told me it was just a fling, but then she told Nathan the same things, the same lines, the same excuses. I scrolled through the messages, my throat tight. Michelle telling Natalie she was different, that they were meant to be, then turning around and telling Nathan the same thing. My wife, my life, spun into a web of lies I couldn't even begin to untangle. I almost told you once, Natalie said, her voice shaking. I wanted to, but I was scared. She made me feel like I was the problem, like I was crazy for thinking there was something more. I looked at her and saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the way her hands trembled when she reached for her cup. You're not crazy, I said softly. She did the same thing to both of us. She nodded, tears glinting in her eyes. I know, and now she's pregnant. I don't even know if Nathan is the father, but you deserve to know the truth. The child deserves to know. We sat there in silence, the noise of the coffee shop fading around us. The truth was there, right in front of me, but it felt like a weight I wasn't sure I could carry. Do you have everything? I asked, gesturing to the phone. The messages, the photos? She nodded. I backed it all up. I'll send it to you. You need to see it for yourself. I thanked her quietly. We didn't say much else after that. We were two people trying to find our way through the wreckage Michelle had left behind. When I got home that night, I sat in the living room with the dogs at my feet and opened the file Natalie had sent me. I read every message, every photo, every lie. My chest felt like it was in a vice. But there was something else too, relief. Because now I knew the truth. And the truth was the first step towards something real, something honest. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let Michelle's lies define me anymore. I owed that to myself, and maybe, just maybe, to the child she carried. No more illusions. No more pretending. Just the truth, no matter how hard it was to face. A week later, I learned that Michelle and Nathan were planning a celebration dinner at a fancy waterfront restaurant, some over-the-top event to toast their future together. When I heard about it, I knew I had to be there, not to cause a scene, but to bring the truth into the light. I called Natalie and asked her to come with me. She hesitated at first, but then said yes. If this is going to end, let it end the right way, she said. We both deserve that much. That night, we arrived early. The restaurant was all soft lighting and expensive wine, the kind of place Michelle loved. We stood outside for a minute, taking a deep breath, and then walked in together. I spotted Michelle and Nathan right away, seated at a long table with their closest friends and family. Michelle looked radiant in a sleek black dress, her hand resting possessively on Nathan's. She was smiling, laughing like nothing in the world could touch her. Nathan saw us first. His eyes widened, and he shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Michelle turned to see what had caught his attention. Her smile froze the moment she saw me. "Vincent," she said, her voice strained. "What are you doing here?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I just reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the envelope I had brought with me. "I think it's time everyone knows the truth," I said. Nathan's face paled. Michelle tried to laugh it off. "This is not the place for it." I cut her off. "You don't get to decide that anymore, Michelle." I placed the envelope on the table and slowly pulled out the printed photos, the screenshots of messages she'd sent to both Nathan and Natalie, whispers of love, of promises, of everything she had said behind each of our backs. I laid them out like cards in a quiet game of poker. The table went silent. The friends who had been sipping wine and smiling seconds before were now staring, eyes wide. Nathan reached for one of the photos, his fingers trembling. He looked at Michelle, his voice low and almost broken. "Is this real?" Michelle tried to recover, her voice brittle. "He's twisting everything. He's just bitter." "No," I said softly, meeting her eyes. "This is the truth. The truth you never thought you'd have to face." For a moment, no one said anything. The only sound was the soft clink of silverware as someone at the next table shifted in their seat, eavesdropping on a drama they couldn't look away from. Nathan looked at me, then back at Michelle. "You lied to me," he said, his voice flat. "You told me you loved me. You told me this was real." Michelle's eyes darted around the table, looking for an ally, someone who would stand up for her. But there was only silence. She tried to stand, to smooth it over with a forced smile. "This is all just a misunderstanding." I shook my head. "It's not, and I'm done pretending otherwise." Natalie, who had been quiet until then, finally spoke. Her voice was calm but strong. "We deserve better than this," she said. "The baby deserves better." For a second, Michelle looked like she might argue. But then something shifted in her face, some small crack in the mask she'd been wearing for so long. She sat back down slowly, her hands trembling on the white tablecloth. Nathan pushed back his chair, standing up. "I'm done," he said simply. And with that, he walked out of the restaurant, leaving Michelle sitting there, her carefully curated life crumbling around her. I turned to Natalie, and we both exhaled, like we'd been holding our breath for months. We walked out together, the cool night air washing over us as we stepped away from the stunned silence behind us. In that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. The lies were done. The truth was out. And whatever came next, I knew I wouldn't be facing it alone. Michelle left town a couple of weeks later. I heard it from a mutual friend. She'd packed up her things and vanished, probably trying to outrun the fallout. I didn't ask where she'd gone. I didn't need to know. Nathan reached out to me once, a quiet apology over the phone. "I'm sorry for everything," he said. "I'll support the baby if it's mine. That's the least I can do." There was a tiredness in his voice that mirrored my own. I told him I hoped he found some peace in all this, because at the end of the day, that's all any of us could really hope for. With Michelle gone, the house felt different. Empty, but in a way that wasn't entirely sad. There was a strange calm to it. No more perfume lingering in the air. No more careful lies wrapped in polite smiles. Just me, Thor, and Loki, settling into a new kind of normal. I took some time off work, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I started spending my mornings down by Green Lake, watching the sunrise paint the water in soft colors. I let the dogs run free, their energy reminding me there was still joy in the world, even after everything had fallen apart. It was during one of those walks that I ran into Dana. She was an old friend, an artist I'd met years ago at a local show. We'd lost touch over the years, but she was still the same, warm, easy to talk to, with a laugh that lit up her face. We started seeing each other, slowly at first. Coffee dates turned into weekend walks by the water, long talks that stretched into the night. There was no pressure, no rush, just two people figuring things out, step by step. One evening, she invited me to her studio. It was a small space filled with half-finished paintings and the faint scent of turpentine. She handed me a brush and said, "Try something, just for fun." And for the first time in years, I let myself create without worrying about how it would turn out. I told her everything, eventually. About Michelle, about Nathan, about the lies and the heartbreak and the weight of all of it. She listened, her hand resting lightly on mine. You don't have to carry it alone anymore, she said softly. And I believed her. Little by little, I started to believe in something new. That happiness isn't something you inherit. It's something you build. One quiet moment at a time. There were still hard days. Nights when the memories of Michelle's laughter or the echo of Nathan's apology would slip into my mind like ghosts. But those moments didn't last as long as they used to. They didn't sting the way they once did. In my home office, I replaced the framed wedding photo with a picture of the lake at sunrise. A reminder that even the coldest mornings can be beautiful. That sometimes, the best thing you can do is let go of what you thought you needed and trust that something better might be waiting. And on quiet nights, when Dana would curl up next to me on the couch, her head resting on my shoulder, I'd think about how far I'd come. About how much I'd lost, yes, but also how much I'd found. No more illusions. No more half-truths. Just the calm after the storm, and the promise of something real. By the time winter rolled around, the chaos of the past few months had started to settle. My name is Vincent Dillard, and if there's one thing I'd learned, it's that life doesn't care about your plans. It doesn't care how many routines you've built or how carefully you've measured out your days. It'll knock it all down in a heartbeat, and all you can do is figure out what's worth rebuilding. Dana and I were taking things slow. She understood that I wasn't ready to jump into anything too fast. Some nights we'd sit in her studio, sipping cheap red wine, music playing low in the background while she worked on a new canvas. Other times, we'd take long walks around Green Lake, talking about everything and nothing. We both liked the quiet. One Saturday afternoon, she surprised me. She had set up a couple of easels by the window, the sun slanting in through the glass. "You don't have to be good," she said, handing me a paintbrush. "Just paint." I hesitated at first, but then I dipped the brush in blue and made a single, messy line across the canvas. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Dana smiled. "That's it," she said. "Start small." It became our thing, painting side by side, not because we were good at it, but because it felt like a way to let go, to be in the moment. Work at the office felt different too. I started leaving a little earlier, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I took the dogs for longer walks, let them pull me down trails I'd never noticed before. It felt like breathing again after months of holding my breath. One afternoon, as I was packing up to leave, I paused to look at the photo on my desk. It was a picture of Lake Chelan at sunrise. I'd taken it on a trip years ago, back when Michelle and I still thought vacations could fix everything. But now it was just a reminder of what peace looked like. A promise to myself. Michelle never came back. She didn't call, didn't write. And maybe that was for the best. Nathan kept his word. He stepped up for the baby, though I didn't ask for details. I had let that part of my life go. Dana's laughter was the soundtrack of my new beginning. It wasn't loud or showy, but it was real. When she laughed, it felt like something honest. Something I hadn't had in a long time. One evening, we sat on the couch, her head resting on my shoulder. She traced circles on the back of my hand and said, "You know, you're not the same person you were when we met." "I know," I said quietly. "That's a good thing," she whispered. And she was right. Because the man I was before, he thought he could control everything, fix everything. But I learned that sometimes you have to let go. That trust is precious, and when it's gone, you can't get it back with routine or promises. As the days turned into weeks, I started to see that maybe I didn't need everything to be perfect. Maybe it was enough to have the small things, the quiet mornings, the laughter of a friend who turned into something more, the gentle peace of a life built on honesty. So here I am, moving forward. I don't know what's waiting down the road, but I'm not afraid of it anymore. The world isn't something you can control. It's something you can walk through, step by step, hand in hand with someone who sees you for who you are. And for the first time in years, that's more than enough.